Welcome back, everybody. So we've been doing a evaluation of EGUI over the last, I don't know, five, maybe 6 live streams on this one now, I suppose. And let's see what we managed to achieve. I managed to make some progress yesterday off air, but let's have a look at that now. Let's dive into that. We'll come back to this spreadsheet. I'll paste a link to this in the chat for those following along with this comparison. Yeah. Okay, and for those of you wondering, the other day we had some issues with the debugger not working. I had to upgrade my IDE because there's a bug in the IDE. Anyway, let's run it. And we'll have a quick look at what requirements we managed to meet or not. Oh, it crashed. Oh dear. Oh, the stream gods are not with me today. Hi, Lemon. How's it going? Now we've got to find out why. Oh dear. Oh no. What on earth has gone wrong with it? It was working yesterday afternoon before I rebooted my computer. Honestly, it was. I even took a screenshot of it. Look, there's the screenshot that I took. Oh, let's just run it again. See what happens. Just, what was it doing? It was calling loader update. And it was joining the thread back again. That's weird. How strange. You forgot to call destroy on EGUI plane. Oh, that's even more weird. Encountered null value. What? What? Oh, this is weird. Oh, this is typical. See, and now you run it again and it's fine. Okay, well, clearly there's some issues there that we need to find out what the cause of that is. Oh, I moved and it crashed. Oh dear. Oh, it's crashing. It's badly crashing now. Oh no. Oh no. It's probably the display of images and oh dear no. Oh, I wasn't expecting this right now. And to be honest, I don't really want to dive into fixing this as part of this stream. I was going to show you what I achieved, but I don't know, maybe we'll switch back to an older commit or something, perhaps. Might be a way of doing it. What are we doing? This is always the way, isn't it? Okay. What was the last thing we did? Update the requirements, yeah. Well, I kind of want to know what's wrong with it, but I wasn't really expecting to have to fix this as part of a live stream. Let's just delete the application state for the moment. I'm just doing that down here. We've got this tabbed document UI. I'm just going to delete the state for that and see, okay, and see what's going on with that. Okay, let's see. We'll find out when it crashes, I suppose, now. So this is what we were able to achieve with EGUI, crashing aside. So we were trying to create our tabbed document example, which we've been creating in other live streams and in other GUI frameworks. Ugh, I'm mincing my words today. Apologies. And the idea is that you have GUI and it has tabs and it has documents, and you want to be able to display images and you want to be able to display text, and you want to have a form which allows you to create an image document or a text document. Yeah, so we've got home and we've got the home tab, And we've got some centering going on. If we close it and reopen it, we don't get a home tab. You press home, you get a home tab. So that was one of the requirements. Another requirement was to have a form which resizes when the window is resized. We managed to achieve this. I don't know why the select little thing goes up and down there. That's a bit weird. How strange. Oh, it's because it shows you the direction it's going to go. Okay, fine. And we've got some form validation. And we can use file pickers. And we can use drop downs. And we should be able to display an image now. Amazing. I haven't got that far with images yet, the image requirements. What I want is for the image to be top left justified and be scrollable, and also we need to be able to click it and display the coordinate on it that we clicked in a little sidebar. We've got a sidebar now, which is good. And this sidebar is scrollable to get to the end of it. So that was good. We can open images, such as this test one that we were using before. Thus, we can switch between tabs. And we can create text documents as well. And again, this is scrollable. We can edit it. We can open existing text documents. And they load in the background. And I added a spinner on there as well while it's loading. So we've got that. What doesn't happen though is the cursor selection isn't maintained when you switch tabs. So if I've selected some content over here, and I go over here and select some content and then switch back to it, it's lost the cursor position. So it's kind of weird. Oh, I guess it's just lost the focus actually. Look, yeah, okay, interesting. So there's some issues with focusing which needs to be resolved when you change tabs, because it's losing the focus control by the looks of it. Oh, it is actually maintaining the state there. It's just losing the focus. Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't realized it was doing that. Still, there we are. Yeah, and we've got our sidebar and it shows you the length and so on. And it's in a grid as well. So we've got grids in the sidebar, which is also what we wanted. And because we're using EGUI doc, we can do things like this. Which, you know, is kind of nice. So that sort of gives you an example of what we were able to achieve with this. So let's go back to the list of requirements. Let me see what happens if I just try and run it again now, see if it crashes or not. Yeah, it's crashing again. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to delve into that at some point. I don't know why it crashes, so there's some state issue with it being restored. I don't know why. Still, we'll find out. Right, so requirements. These are the requirements. We haven't done any error handling. So the idea was we're supposed to have the main window, we've got the toolbar, we've got home, open, new, and then we've also got close all. I haven't added a language drop down. Maybe we'll add a language drop down today in the stream. That might be an idea. We could do that. We could try and meet this requirement. We'll ignore the state problems with images for today. We've got a tab bar. One of the things we don't have with the tabs, when you close the tab, it kind of leaves the wrong one open afterwards. And that's currently out of our control, and we need a PR for EGUI doc to fix that. particular issue. We've got tab content. Tab content maintains its state, that expensive reloading and so on. So because it's an immediate mode GUI, there's no sort of state to be retained really. It's just sort of there. You have your state inside your application. It's the way that it works compared to retained mode is a little bit different. So that's kind of simpler in EGUI, but yeah, there's trade-offs. We've got a home tab with a welcome message and checkbox. We've got the new tab with form validation. We managed to do all that. I haven't actually made it create the files yet. So when you go new, you give it where you're going to put the file, and you tell it the name of the file, and it puts an extension on it and displays the actual file contents. So, but it's only in memory at the moment. It's not saved. So I haven't done that. So maybe we could do that, but you know, it's just, it's not particularly exciting, that particular requirement. It's basically just using the file system. But tab state. So we've got a text tab. We've got some focus issues. I've marked these up as not working, but apparently maybe they are working. The text selection. We managed to get a sidebar, but we can't get the selection information from the text editor. There's no API to do it. So in the text document one, somewhere we have like a text edit, right? And there's kind of like this weird catch-22 situation here, because we want to display information about how many characters are selected, but there's two problems. One, we don't have a text edit to actually interrogate until this method is called content UI, but we want to render our sidebar with the information in it before we've got a text editor to interrogate. So it's kind of like, well, how'd you do it? I don't know. Do we have to, you know, even if it did have the API, how would we even do something with it? It's kind of weird. So the API for this text edit gives us ID, show, margin, frame, character limit, code cursor at the end, and so on. And then return keys. So it's kind of weird. Like you can't go get text, get selected text. There's no API for it. And if there was, then you would have the text, you know, you'd have that here, but we're trying to lay out a sidebar with all the items in it somewhere up here, which is miles away from it. So it's kind of weird. Whereas with a retained mode GUI, you would create the text edit object, and then you would give the text edit object to the view. And before you gave it to the view, you could interrogate it, and or I don't know, you'd call something on it to get a text selection, really. Yeah, it's a bit funky. So anyway, yeah, going back to the requirements. So we couldn't get that one. Image tab. I did a bit of work on this yesterday. This one's not as complete yet. Top left justified. At the moment it's centered. I'm sure we can get it top left justified. Let's have a quick look at the image code, because you guys haven't seen it yet. Background image loading and creating. I struggled with it yesterday. It's a bit funky. So when you're creating an image, right, you have to create an image data, and then you have to create a text. You have to create a texture for this image so that the GPU has something to render. And this load texture, it's a bit funky. It's kind of I don't know whether it's named very well, but it doesn't actually load anything. It's more of like store or save or keep texture, but it certainly doesn't load anything. It sort of like gives it to the back end graphics card subsystem or something, I think is what it's doing, but it's kind of funky. Yeah, because it's not using loaders or anything like that to do it. And then what you get is a texture handle, and if you drop the texture handle, then the texture gets lost, and then you can't display anything. And a texture handle has an ID and a size. So if you want to display an image, you have to create an image source of a size texture from a handle, and then you can create an image control by cloning the source. Oh, it might not be. We might not have to clone it there, actually. I think that's left over. I've removed that. Remove unnecessary. Oh. Spelling the word unnecessary is always fun. Yeah, so that's how you display an image that you've created, but you also need to display an image that you loaded from disk. And the way that works is we have a from path method, and I had to rejigger the constructors for the image document. So because loading a image from disk requires a context, and creating an image in memory requires a UI. So that was fun. So everywhere we've got this create new, everywhere we call create new, we had to now pass some extra arguments to that. I futzed around with this for so long, trying to use the EGUI extras crate and all the text loaders and APIs. I gave up trying to use that in the end, and this is what I was actually trying to do down here, but the API was just a nightmare for loading images. It's fine if you just want to load an image and display it, right? But if you've got the case where I have, where you want to either load an image or create an image and then have one piece of code which uses the image from either of these two sources, it's apparently much more of a problem than you might think. It's very strange. And I was very confused by the API, because there's this try load texture. Now I don't know whether it's actually going to try and load the texture when I give it a URI. And then I had to futz around with URIs because, I've got a path, but all the image loaders seem to want a URI, which is kind of weird. I've got a path already. Why do I need an image loader that uses a URI? So I had to, create URIs, and then you need a crate to encode the slashes and all this kind of stuff in it. And then maybe we're supposed to be doing load image and not load texture or something, but I tried some variants of things before, stumbling across the texture handle stuff, and I need to look at it a bit more, but I spent way too long trying to do this yesterday. So I gave up with this API and ended up using the image crate. And because it was getting on in the day, I asked ChatGPT to create this bit of code, and it dutifully did. So that was good. And it surprisingly worked as well. So yeah, handy. So yeah, ChatGPT. So it's quite nice that ChatGPT is able to actually create EGUI code. I think this is what it created. Generate your Rust code to use EGUI to try load text to generate an image source. This is what we did. Yeah. And various different issues with that. So yeah, that was not fun. Yeah. And then I stripped out all the URI stuff from it because apparently you don't need a URI. So yeah, so there was that. I need to clean up a bunch of warnings in this, but whatever. So yeah. So this is the fapping about you have to do to get a texture and keep hold of it. Still. And then there's some very odd like warnings and things that I don't fully understand with regards to this load texture thing. The call is not immediate safe. I have no idea what that means. What? So I'm gonna have to ask or find out somehow. Let me just try and ask this in Discord now, in the EGUI Discord, and see if we get a response in this stream while we're here. Let's have a look. On context, what's the method called? Load texture. It says what does that mean? There. Okay. So this might have something to do with why it's crashing. I don't know. I guess we'll find out at some point. So yeah, images. Unhappy thoughts was that the image API is painful. I'll delve into that a little bit more. So with the context, right? Load image, right? This is why it's a bit funky, right? You get a load image result when you try and load an image from a URI. Firstly, it says URI, but I don't care about URIs. I've got a path. So then I have to create a URI, which is a faff. And it's not just as simple as sticking file : / at the front of a path, because you have to escape things and turn all the slashes around and so on. And then, so it'd be nice if the API supported like paths directly. I mean, I tried and it wasn't working, but there may have been another bug in my code that was preventing it from working, so I might have to go back and try again. But yeah. And then you get an image load result, but you have to register image loaders, and the image loaders seem to be in a second crate called EGUI extras. And EGUI extras has some features called image, file, and all loaders, right? And you also have to do install image loaders on the context before this code will even think about loading it, because you might not want the dependencies for JPEG in your code. You maybe just want BMPs and PNGs or something, so you can pick and choose which file formats you want to support, which is fine. And maybe you want to load images over HTTP as well, which is fine. So you need loaders to do it. Yeah. But then try load image gives you a load result, and that gives you an image poll, but it's not clear to me at all what makes an image poll go from its pending state to its ready state and when it happens. Right? So if you just sit there in a while loop expecting image poll to end up being ready, it doesn't. I don't know what drives it to go from pending to ready. So that's very confusing. So, and then maybe you get an image out of it, but you get an image and not a texture. So you get an arc color image, right? And now we'll go back and look at how you're supposed to use the image renderer thing inside the UI. So we've got image, right? And then down here, we've got image new. But image new takes an image source. So we've got a file load result. Image load result, sorry. We've got an image load result, but new wants into image source. So how do you get like an image source out of a file load result? Yeah. So then you're like, okay, textures maybe? So then image source, you've got either a URI, a texture, or some bytes. But I haven't got any of those. I've got an image load result, which contains an image. A size texture has a texture ID and a vec of 2. And you can create a size texture from a handle, but you still need the handle. It's just, so I wasn't a fan of the image loading API. Maybe I'm missing something, but it wasn't very clear. Yeah. So I'm going to experiment with that a little bit more and see if I'm going to understand that better. But yeah, if you want to load an image, you're going to have some fun. It's odd API. It doesn't work like how I would have expected it to. Yeah, weird. So, you know, I mean, I tried naively just waiting on the result, and even more weirdly, like you get a result, and then, I mean, this was texture. I need to switch it back to like loading images, but it wasn't clear if load texture is talking to the GPU and then load image is something else that happens. Maybe you need to load an image first, which creates a texture, and then you got to call. Do you have to go try load texture to send that to the GPU on the image that you've got so that you can get a texture handle so that you can use it for rendering? Yeah, it wasn't clear. I haven't read too much of the documentation on this, but I did read some, but it wasn't clear. So, back to the README. Image top left justified, scaling images. You can probably do some resizing and so on the textures now, but I haven't tried it yet. I need to make it actually not crash first, apparently. And then scrolling it around, might have to try doing that. I haven't tried adding the code to like register a click yet. Like, how do you click an image and get where you've clicked? I don't know how we do that yet. And I haven't put the size information in the sidebar yet either. But I don't fancy doing that right now. Application state. We are able to load and save application state. That seems to work sort of like out of the box with EGUI, which is kind of nice. But it also has some implications to how you organize your shared state. Because the thing that is saved and loaded for you, if I can find it, is this, which is part of the template app, right? But everything you put in here needs to be serializable and deserializable. And because of that requirement, you need everything needs to implement default, and not everything will implement default, which then ends up causing you to have to put some of your state in some other structure and then wrap that other state in an option or a maybe on init, which does have a default implementation. Or maybe there's some other futzing around that you have to do with Serde so that it creates you something when it doesn't exist by using a Serde method to instantiate a member or something. Who knows? But there's fapping about that you have to do. But the state kind of works. It does work. But there's some gotchas. Yeah. Now let's get into the thoughts about architecture. So it's said that retained mode GUIs are better for larger productivity apps. People have said this in quite a few places, and after using EGUI, I would probably agree with that statement now. I mean, I had some reservations about EGUI before I started using it, with regards to application structure. So one of my requirements is code should be written in such a way that multiple developers can work on different aspects of the code base without creating merge conflicts, i.e. use modules, avoid tight coupling, good compile time dependencies, etc. Good practices basically for a large project. It's fine if you've got like a little toy application and you just want to display like an egg timer or whatever like that. EGUI is probably fine for doing that kind of thing, right? But when you've got an application that needs to scale and have many different aspects to it, I mean, if you're creating like a word processor or something like that in it, or like, a tool like Fusion 360 or something like that, where you've got lots of different user interfaces that you need within one application with loads of different views and dialogues and forms and windows and all this kind of stuff. You need to be able to structure this code. You need to be able to structure that code, and it needs to be maintainable. So, on the point of maintainability, let's have a look at the text one, right? Let's just go through the app from the start to the end. How does it work at the moment? Let's go into app. Let's see what we created. So EGUI apps, they have, oh my gosh, an update method. Here it is. They have an update method. Update gets called every frame. Hey. But your application might want to do things regardless of any user input or notion of a frame. Okay, so you need to have sort of like a main core loop which does stuff maybe in the background all the time, like counts the timer up or something like that, right? But the EGUI update method only gets called when the UI needs to be rendered. So we haven't got that particular issue in this application, but if you're doing something more complicated, you would have that issue. And the more complicated thing is what I'm going to be doing with the MakerPnP stuff. Still, there we go. Anyway, so what we've got is we're creating a panel, right? So we're on UI creation, and then immediately underneath that, we've got some other code to deal with messages coming in. You're like, what? Why is that inside the panel? Why? Because you need a UI in order to process the messages. Because create document, if you're creating an image, it needs the UI. Okay, fine. But you can't get a UI until you start creating an object to put into the UI by using one of the containers. So top panel, for instance, lives inside the containers. So you need containers, and most of the containers have like a show method on them, and these show methods are what gives you a UI. So yeah, so that's kind of weird. Yeah. So we've got message processing mixed in with creation of a top panel, and the message processing doesn't even put anything in the top panel. So this message processing could like essentially be in a dummy container somewhere else, but you need a container for it. It's kind of weird. So you got this mixed in. And I don't think message processing and UI layout code should belong in the same sort of like method. So we've got message processing. We've got message processing so that a document UI can tell the main app that something happens or a form needs to be created. So when you press submit, for instance, it sends a message to the app to say that the new form has been submitted, and then the app needs to go and futz around with the tabs and create documents and replace tabs and all this kind of thing, right? So that's what it's doing. There's also background threads that run, and then when those background threads finish, they need to communicate to the app that the app needs to redraw something. Otherwise, the background thread will finish and nothing will happen until you move the mouse, or otherwise cause some UI frame to need to be rendered. So there you have to use like other crates like EGUI inbox, for instance, in order to do that, and you've got to have this call to request repaint, I think it was, on the context, which is why this context is passed over to this receiver, and this receiver is of a type UI inbox. So that's what's going on there. Right. So then we've got some menus. Haven't really futzed around with the menus very much, but we've got menu code there. Fine. Then we've got a frame, and again, a frame is one of these things that gives you a UI. And then we've got layout code. We've got layout code. So in EGUI, there's different ways to do layout. And if you want a more complicated layout with resizable things inside it, it's non-trivial. And then you have to start using things like EGUI Flex or EGUI Taffy. So we've got layout code, and then we've got creation of buttons. And then we've also got the code that handles the buttons immediately and all mixed into it. And I'm not a big fan of that. In Iced, a message would be emitted, and then that message would then be handled and given to an update method. And I definitely think that's a more sane approach to do it. In reactive frameworks, you register callback handlers, and in some cases you can then be mixing in your sort of like business logic-y code, as in non-presentation code, in your UI layout code, because that code can live in the callback handlers. But you can also pass functions and so on to the callback handlers, and therefore you can separate that better. But in EGUI, no, it's all mixed in. It's all mixed in. So yeah, so that's not ideal. So then we've got like some code which deals with like doing some layout, some code which has messages in it, and then we've got some other code which basically handles whether this is the first frame of the application or not, because you have to do various things if it is the first frame, such as like restoring documents and things like this, and showing the home tab. And you can't run this code earlier because there's no UI. So it has to run somewhere around here. And this code needs to be above the code which displays the tabs. Yeah. Then we create a docking area. And then we've also got some other code just randomly slapped in here to check the file picker to see whether that's finished. Yeah. Right. So we've got this docking thing. Let's carry on delving into a little bit to see how the tabs get rendered. So my tab viewer is an app tab viewer. An app tab viewer implements tab viewer. And all the tabs, for every open tab, UI is called. And the tab viewer works on tab keys in this. And we then find the tab kind in our list of tabs and then delegate to it. And we call our UI method on it. And our tab kind says, well, if we're a home tab, then on that particular tab kind, which we get from that tab kind, call its UI method, right? That gets given some context as well. And then it then does some rendering code with Taffy, right? That's how that one works. Let's go back to the new tab to have a quick look at that one. This is the one that does the form code. So the UI on the new tab has got some code which checks a file picker. It's doing some validation. It's then futzing around with text wrapping because of Taffy. Then it's creating some styles, and then it's laying out a container. And then inside that container, there's another container. And then inside that container, you've got a grid container. And inside that grid, you've got some cells. And inside those cells, you've got some controls, like a text edit. And then underneath that, we've got some code to handle displaying error messages. And then we repeat the same thing for the directory and the drop-down. And this is creating a drop-down. I was shocked by the amount of code that is required to create a drop-down in EGUI. Shocked I was. Let's have a quick look at it, just in case you haven't seen it before. That is how you create. Wait. That is how you create a drop down with text and image on it, where the drop down doesn't have any default options selected. I mean, it works, but damn, it's not very simple, is it? And then you've also got the code which handles the selection code sort of mixed in with that as well. So you've got the creation of it mixed in with the user selected this do something code, which is this block here, because you call this clicked returns true if that option is selected. So that's in there too. So yeah, drop downs, and then we've got a submit button, which calls our on submit method immediately if it is clicked. So again, it's like creating a button and then handling it immediately. It's not using callbacks or closures to do it. Yeah. So when our form is submitted, it sends a message to our main app. We'll create document with some arguments which are taken from the fields from the form. And it only does that if the fields are valid. So that's how we achieve that. We also had to do quite a lot of fapping about to use I18N in this, especially with the validation messages. We had to dig into all this stuff the other day. Yeah. And going from validation errors requires using JSON. Yes, JSON dependencies. Like, why? Because they use the number, this class, from Serde JSON inside the validator report, which wasn't good. So I didn't like that. But you know, this is what we did. So that's how the form is displayed. So then we'll jump back to the main code again, and we'll have a look to see how that message gets processed when you submit the form. So if you submit the form, you receive a message. If that message is an app message create document, then great, you've got some args. So then we use the args to call create document inner, and we also pass over the UI as well, because we need to. And then this create document basically either creates a text document or an image document. And the app has a list of documents, and the app has a list of tabs, and it has tab state as well. And it's got these three things which are independent of each other. And tab keys are used to look up tabs, and tabs have tab kinds. And if the tab kind is a document kind, then the document tab has a document key. And then the particular implementation of the document can then use its key to ask the app for the document to do things with it. It's a bit convoluted, but that's the point of this example. Documents don't know that they are being rendered inside tabs. One of the key points to this. So if we have a quick look at where we are, so we've got our app tabs, we've got a document tab up here, right? And it doesn't know anything about how to render the different types of documents, text or image documents. It just knows that it's got a document and that it delegates to the right type of document based on the document type the tab is for. And then all the rendering for the particular document happens inside either the text document or the image document. So go back to the document inner method for a moment. So this basically creates a document kind and puts the document in the document kind, and then adds the document kind to the app's list of documents, which is in the state. Then once it's done that, you get a key. And then you can create a tab kind of a document tab with a document key. And the key is just like an identifier for a slot. So the tab doesn't have the document, it just has the document key. And if you create an image one, it basically does the same kind of thing, but instead of creating a text document, it creates an image document. It's fine. And here you can see why we need the UI on this, because creating a new image document requires the UI because of this call. We have to load the texture, and that is done on the UI. Maybe we can just pass the context in here instead, actually. I'll have a fiddle with that one after the stream. So creating. So that's how the various different types of documents and document tabs are created. And then let's have a look at the text document. So then a tab gets created, and then the tab viewer then will now have a tab in its list, and then it will then delegate to that particular tab's UI method, right? So UI gets called, and then UI gets called on text document. And then this basically has a document context given to it, because you need to fiddle about with the document. Document context has config in it, and it has a sender currently. And you need various different types of context objects to be passed to the different types of things that you're trying to render, which contain subsets of the application state that those things need to work with. So the Home tab, for instance, needs to have access to the config so that it can look at and mutate the value of the Show Home on Startup checkbox. For example, a document context might need the config to, do other things with the config. Maybe there's a setting in the config which tells you whether the background of a document should be red or black or something. Who knows? But you need access to your config generally. And if something happens in one of these documents, it probably needs to be able to tell the application that something happened. Like, I don't know, save or something like that, and whether that's handled internally or whether the application needs to know that it's saved. Various different reasons why you might need to tell the app to do something. So in order to be able to tell the app, it needs to be able to send a message to it that then gets processed. So it's got a sender in there as well. So the UI method on here updates the background loadery thing, which we created, which I extracted to a separate module here. Basically, this loader, you pass it a closure which takes a path and then converts it into a type T. But this happens in the background. And when it's finished, it then needs to tell the UI to refresh. So that's why there is... where is it? Loader. Let's load. On loaded message gets given to it. I forget where this comes from. Hold on. There it is. So when it's finished loading, it sends the refresh message. And then the app gets re-rendered again. So that's how it transitions from going from a spinner when the document is loading in the background to the actual document. Something needs to trigger that, and that's what this refresh message is that gets passed over to the loader. So loader, back to how it works. Then we've got all the code to do with styling again. We've got creating sidebars. It feels like this sidebar stuff should be extracted into like a crate or whatever. But yesterday I added these comments at the end of this because with EGUI, there's a lot of indentation and nesting when you're laying things out compared to, say, Cushy, for instance, where we're doing the same thing. Text document. Yeah. No indentation, not really. So yeah. This is the layout code in Cushy. I know which one I prefer using. You make your own mind up. Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun. It does work though. And when you ask questions, they often get answered in the community, and that's good. And there are lots of developers working on it, so that's good. Yeah. Let's see if anyone answered my question. So see, case in point, people have actually answered the questions that I asked in Discord. I asked, what does the call is not immediate safe? I asked, what does that mean? And we have a response. One person says, it means you shouldn't be calling it every frame because it'll load it again every frame. Okay. And another person says, non-immediate save won't be done in a trivial amount of time. That makes a little bit more sense. Okay. That explanation was helpful. So, I'll tell him thank you very much. So that's good. Yeah. So people answer questions when you ask them. And ChatGPT knows how to write code for you. So both of these things are in EGUI's favor. But the amount of code you have to do to lay things out and the fact that it's all sort of intertwined, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. Yeah, and then, we've got another way of laying things out as well. So we're mixing two different styles of layout here, which is kind of weird. Not a big fan of the layout in EGUI at all. Yeah. But it works. It does indeed work. Is it maintainable? Let's go back to the requirements in this thing in our list. Code should be written in such a way that multiple developers can work on different aspects of the code base without getting merge conflicts. I mean, you can sort of separate big chunks of it up, okay. But within those chunks, there's lots of intertwined bits of code. It's not clear where any of the code really should live compared to, say, iced architecture, for instance. In that, it's much clearer where you're supposed to put your code. Much clearer. Let's bring up the iced example again. We haven't looked at that for a little while, have we? IDE error. port. Oh, what's going on with this? Oh, there it goes. Weird. I don't even remember what this looked like now. Been a while. Yeah, let's find the code again for a moment in iced. Quick look at it. Let's look at the home tab. This is what we created here. So in iced, we've got this view method, which is how the view is created, which again doesn't have much nesting. Let's have a look at the new tab while we're at it. Quick comparison. So we've got a form, we've got columns, we've got widgets, and then we've got layout stuff. And you know, it was all fairly reasonable. I think the ice stuff here was. This isn't too bad. And then we've got the update method where we change the state, and it's much clearer where you're supposed to put your code. Much clearer. Oh, is it going to run? Is it going to run? Oh, it might actually run. Yeah. Oh. Man, it was so long ago since we did this. It's quite interesting coming back at something you wrote like a couple of months ago and looking at it and comparing it. Is it dead? What's it doing? Let's run it again. The demo gods aren't very good to us today, are they? I don't know why the iced example isn't running anymore. Who knows? Well, I guess we're not going to be looking at that then. But at least the code was more organized. That was the point. Yeah. With EGUI, you just get your UI or your update method. Yeah, there's only one method. With Cushy, it was different. You created the things that held your state. You created your state, and then you have something that returns a widget, and everything was a widget. And this concept was quite good as well. Everything was a widget. Because containers are widgets, and controls are widgets, and images are widgets, and everything's a widget. And therefore, there's no problems with putting one thing inside another thing because everything's a widget. Whereas in EGUI, you've got widgets, I think, and you've got containers. And I'm not sure if containers are widgets. Yeah. So that was a bit funky. Yeah. So for instance, this top panel lives in containers, and then you've got widgets, which are here. And widgets implement widget, and containers like panel don't. But they still do like layout code and all that kind of thing. So yeah. I haven't dug into exactly how to create widgets because we've not needed to, which honestly is a good thing with EGUI that we've not actually had to delve into this. But yeah, you know. Stay positive. Drink from the happy mug. So the question is, I don't know. Do we like it? Is it good enough to use? Should we use EGUI or iced? I think is what we're trying to decide at this point. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure at this point. I'm really not. Something is just bothering me. It's really hard to put my sort of finger on it and describe exactly what's bothering me about why I'm so hesitant to use EGUI going forward for a large project. It's, I don't know. EGUI feels hacky. Hacky is probably the best way to describe it. Not sure about it. I'm really not. But at the same time, you can get a lot done with it. So I don't know. I guess we're going to have to try it. And see if we can cajole it into not being like an unmaintainable mess. Yeah. One of the other things that's making me very hesitant about using EGUI for the actual main project after, creating this example project is because the main project is using like an API to get stuff done in the background. And that API is one that is sort of like I don't know, it's kind of like a web API essentially. You say here's a command and then you get a response, and then given that response you need to render the UI, right? But for EGUI, what that's going to mean is that you're going to have to pull bits of that state out and then retain that state so that you can then pull bits out of that state when you want to display your UI. And that side of things is going to bother me. But we're going to see how it pans out, I suppose. We should probably try using EGUI for the MakerPnP project. Yeah. Let's go back to the spreadsheet for a minute and see if we can answer some questions in here now. And let's try and fill in some thoughts. Yes, this will probably help with this decision-making process, I think. So this is good. Right. What red flags are there? So contributors, good. Many. There we go. I don't know what year it was created. So like, how mature is it? Cushy was, it's not very mature, for instance. MakePad's been going for ages, but I think they're trying to do lots of things. I guess we could find out. What's the easiest way of showing the initial commit? I always forget this. There is a way of doing it. I had to do it recently for one of the other ones. Yeah. This one. That was it. Let's see if we can find out. EGUI. Oh. Initial commit. 2018. 2018. So it's been going quite a while. Which probably goes some way of explaining why there's so many crates and so on for it and lots of users in a large community, because it has been going for quite a long time. Which is what, 6 years? Nearly 6 years or so now? What was the date on this? December 23, yeah. It's about 6 years old. Interesting. Let me grab the commit number. So yeah, so the question is, have they learnt lots of stuff in 6 years, and would they do the same again? I mean, they're still going, so probably. Okay, SVG support. I don't know whether it's got SVG support yet. I've still not dug into that. Let's just do a Google search. EGUI SVG. EGUI extras. Okay, so there's some support for SVG in there. I guess that's good. Yes, via EGUI extras. Okay. Keyboard control, we don't know about that yet. I haven't dug into that. People do use EGUI for doing games and all this kind of stuff. So there's some of that. I don't know. I'm going to leave that as an unanswered for now. It doesn't have an event system. It does have a lot of widgets, which is good. Guess one of the things we wanted to find out is whether there were tables. I think there was some of those in the examples, wasn't there? EGUI table. Table builder. Yeah, there's some tables, you know. Yeah. There are some of these things. Documentation. This is interesting as well. Documentation for EGUI. As of this last like 6 live streams, I've not had to dig into the documentation very much at all in EGUI, which is interesting. I think most of the things that I've been looking at have been based on like the example code. I mean, there's the API documentation, which is this. Let's have a quick look and see what's in here now, just so that we can have a look. Oh, okay. Using EGUI, container, layout, quick start, viewports, coordinate systems, integrating. Widgets, how widgets work. Widget interaction. Yeah. Yeah, the documentation's, I don't know. Is there an EGUI book? Lots of Rust projects have like an EGUI book. EGUI's examples are pretty good though. Oh look, someone's asking this question. That should be fun. Do we think EGUI is ready for a real industry application? Yeah. Interesting reading, I'm sure. People trying to answer the same questions as me. Table builder, get rid of that. EGUI book. Did we find a book? Let's go back to the home page. Is there a book? No. So there isn't a book like there is with some of the other ones. Like, which gives you more of an overview of things and walks you through some of the things that you might want to do in more detail. So for instance, like Deoxys. Oh yeah, let's search for that again because this lives in the documentation. This kind of documentation is what I'm sort of referring to, where they go into all the things in great detail. It'd be nice if there was one of these like book things for EGUI, but I can't find one. Yeah. So, book, no. Repo and API only. Yeah. Developer friendliness. Discoverability. It's not great. I think it's the same problem we had in Iced. Whereas instead of like method chaining for discoverability, there's some other thing you can call instead on some parent object that allows you to do something with the child in a different way. For instance, add sized being one of these things. So instead of creating a multi-line text editor with a given, size, dot size, blah, 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 which is kind of where you expect to find this kind of thing, you have to do UI.addSized instead to size it. And it's sort of backwards to how my brain wants the API to work. And that was the same in Iced as well. So I'm going to copy this across here. Yeah. ID autocomplete, yes. We do have that. Your Rust. I guess that's the same as well. Temporal coupling. Yes. Yes. You can't just rearrange your code and expect it to work in immediate mode UIs. So, for instance, in my app, right, I can't take this bit of code and put it underneath this. It's not going to work. So the section above is temporally coupled to the section below, which is not ideal. They don't depend on each other. There's no code dependencies. They don't use the same properties. They don't use the same variables. But if you do, when the code runs, it has effects. If those effects happen in the wrong order, the system breaks, which is therefore fragile. You get a fragile system. If you've got two lines of code and you can't rearrange them because one thing creates the thing the other one needs, then you can't get into the situation where you can reverse two lines of code and have the system even compile. And you're not going to know about the breakage at compile time. You're only going to know about it at runtime. So there's temporal coupling. So there is some temporal coupling. Yeah. Intermediate mode. ... GUI testability. I've not dug into that yet. But they've added, we've not dug into it. Let's have a look. It's like EGUI test kit or something like this. I think it's called kit test. That's it. This. So apparently you can use this in the latest version of EGUI. We've not tried it yet. Yeah, we need to work out how to do this. I need to have a look at this before I start using the EGUI in earnest, because it would be nice to get back into this test-driven development cycle, which has just gone straight out of the window with all this GUI code that we've been writing recently, and I'm not a happy bunny because of it. So yeah, testability. I'm going to say OK and see EGUI kit test. I'm going to say maybe OK, and I'm going to come back and change that once I've delved into it a little bit more. This face. Yeah, let's have a look. This will be a fun one. EGUI tab document example. And we need to go -H, I think, don't we? Yeah. Let's see what it thinks of the target directory. 7.5 gig. Am I just the only one that's just blown away by the amount of cruft that is created by compilers these days in terms of the sheer amounts of data that you need? 7.5 gigabytes to compile this application. That's nuts. Gigabytes. Gigabytes. Wow. It could be worse though, because she was 18. 7.5 gigabytes for tabbed document UI. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It is what it is. Repo layout. I mean, I think it's okay. EGUI. Not that one. Kit test, EGUI, this one. Like, crates. We've got all the crates there. Everything seems, kind of okay. Seems pretty reasonable. Yeah. We're going to say good. Example's very good. It's pretty comprehensive in its examples. Yeah. Other observations and issues. Intermediate mode. Can't spell immediate. Okay, there we go. UI code is mixed in with application logic. it gets the red button, the red flag. Like, but can you work around it? So yes. Other people's projects using EGUI. So if we go on the EGUI repo, where is it? This one. And go, what is it? Insights, I think. Dependency graph. This one. This is good. We can see them. Dependents. So, other people's projects that use EGUI. How many are there? 17,000 dependents. That's quite a lot of other people using EGUI. Did we make a note of that? Dependencies, for example, dependent. Probably should have made a note of that for some of these other ones. Dependents, I think it is. Let's say GitHub dependents. And let's put what that number was, which was 17,968. We'll paste the link to that in there. And this is good. We'll give that a green thing. And the point of that test is to say, well, I'm stuck. Can I find some existing code which might do the same thing as me? In 17,968 repositories, the answer is probably going to be yes. As opposed to, for instance, pushy. If we do the same check, where we go insights, dependency graph. Is it dependency graph or network? Dependents. 22. Of which I'm one. No, I'm in fact two of those. Look, I'm the top one. Oh, that's funny. Still, there we are. 22. So we'll just put that in here. Yeah, 22. And we'll just give this the big red flag. And we could check the same for the other repos as well. I might fill that in later. But the point is that there's lots of other people using it, and you can find out what you might need to know by looking at some other code. How up to date they are and whether they're just toy projects and all that kind of stuff is another matter entirely, but there's 17,000 of them, so that's good. Lots of real world apps. I didn't look at them, but there must be in 17,000. Right? Yeah. Things we liked, things we didn't like. Let's review the notes. Image API was painful. UI handling code mixed in with UI creation code. We said that. Layout is a nightmare. Yes, let's write that down. UI layout painful and code gets very, very nested. red flag. But can we work around it? This is what I'm trying to answer. Styling. We didn't dig into styling very much. I mean, the fact that I don't know much about it is an interesting fact. It tells you two things. One, the default styles weren't hideous, that therefore required you to go and try and style them to make it look nice. Two, it didn't get in the way, and I wasn't stuck trying to style things. Default style is okay. Shall we say nice? Is it nice? I mean, I'm going to be kind today. Default look and feel is nice. Let's have a quick look at the styling, right? Because I did do a little bit. Let me try and find where it was. Style dot this. Here it is. This is where I did some styling. So, given a context, you can change the style, but I don't know whether other things sort of inherit that. They seemed to. And then somewhere else, yeah. So on this style thing, there's this. Styling, text styles, number formatting, wrapping, and then you've got this spacing thing, margins, and so on. All F32s. I mean, it can be styled. There is a styling system there, but we didn't have to use it very much. Bit of an unknown, that. It's probably best just not put any comment in there about it, really, to be honest. Let's give that a green one, though. Wrong green. My OCD's kicking in. Oh, no. There we go. That's the right green now. Capable, I think, is good. Other observation, get very capable. Yeah. Let's go back to my notes. Layout is a nightmare, yeah. Did I make a note of that? Yeah, layout again. No sort of tasks, event system. Roll your own. Yeah. So whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not entirely certain about right now, because it keeps it flexible, which is good. But at the same time, it means out of those 17,000 repositories, everyone's going to be doing things in a slightly different way. So I think really this gets an orange flag. for that reason. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Widget library is good, yeah. Widgets. Comprehensive amount of widgets. Very good. It's mostly positive, really, isn't it? Except this one. And this one. One of the things I'm wondering with EGUI is whether we can turn it into the same kind of system that we did with the Cushy, where we've got our support for sort of like essentially commands and messages and things like this, where we introduce a bit of the Elm architecture from Iced into it. Might have to try and find out, because then, you know, if we can put our code into some nice patterns where we follow this render slash update and keep these things separate from each other, and have messages sent back from UI interactions, i.e. UI interactions send messages, and then state is changed as a result of messages, and then the UI gets rendered again. If we can introduce that into EGUI, that might be all right. But as it is right now, like out of the box, the structure, I don't like it. So yeah. Thoughts. Suitability for complex or dynamic desktop. Yeah. This is the burning question, this one. Is it suitable? Still don't know. Maybe. But care needs to be taken to structure the application. Yeah, probably that. So I feel it might be an orange. Overall feeling for attempting to write the test case. Usable. There. I said it. Usable. Usable. So I guess I'm going to have to try and use it. Yes, I'm going to have to try and use it for our main project. I've still got some reservations. The whole how it interacts with the Crux app is weighing on my mind a little bit, but I think I'll try and get the MakerPnP planner app skeleton created. I'm going to have a go at trying to use the test kit as well, and see if we can start migrating from Cushy to EGUI, and then see what happens when we try that. Yeah. So people, if this was interesting for you, please let me know. Add a comment below. I've done like 47 47 videos. Is this the 47th video? 46 or 47 videos on all these different UIs systems at the moment now. And it's been a lot of work over a number of months. So yeah, if you liked it and appreciate it, give me a thumbs up. All right. So just remember, folks, it's only software. How hard can it be? We'll find out on the next one. See ya.